you ever stop using Will you stop eating?
Hello!
Hello friends and welcome to my chomp down on Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. I'm just going to start off with my general impressions, but this is going to turn into a bit of a spoiler heavy review. Whereas a lot of the good parts of Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them wasn't spoiler heavy, a lot of the meat of the movie is a huge spoiler altogether. So I kind of figure if you like Harry Potter, if you're a big fan, you've already seen the movie, but if you haven't seen the movie yet, I really suggest you do, because as a fan, I had a great time. I have a lot of problems with the movie, but I had a great time. I thought it was fun. And even if it is a bit of a failure, it was much better for me as a fan of the material than any of the DC movies have been for me as a fan of that material. So this movie takes place a good 70 years before the original story, in fact. And as much as I love Harry Potter and the original crew, I'm glad to be away from them after 8 movies with them. And there's a few things that separates this from the original story. Whereas there's time, there's also space, because we're in New York rather than in London. We're not in school anymore either. We are out on the main streets of New York, seeing the Muggle universe and how the wizards kind of interact there. Where England was very different of a setup, because in America, they're very separated, to the point where wizards are not allowed to interact with muggles. And this movie did a fantastic job of giving you that feel that the wizarding world should give you. A feeling of just hugeness, like you could crawl inside of a briefcase and have a whole world in front of you. They're using magic left and right, and a lot of them don't even have to say the spells out loud, which is a lot of fun. The wizard battles start to get old after a while because it's a lot of just throwing lights, but it's good, and it's fun. In this whole series, oh yeah, this is only the start of this series. There's going to be about 5 movies in Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, and that's really rough because this one movie really suffered because it was almost all set up. Almost all of the storylines really fall off to the point where almost every climax is extremely weak. One climax you see in the trailers, one climax is a twist that really doesn't work, and the third climax just blue light in the sky, sure, but it's just a smoke monster. But to fight the smoke monster, we need Newt Scamander, our main man, our boy, who really doesn't care about people, which is a weird thing to have your main character do. If your main character doesn't care about people, it makes it hard for the audience to care about the people around them. Whereas a lot of the characters in this movie are really underdeveloped. Newt Scamander, he's developed a little bit, but we have 5 more movies to go with him. The group around him is pretty much fantastic, and maybe the best part of this movie. The real glue of the original series was the friendship that stuck everyone together, the real feeling of love, and between the 4 main characters, you do kind of start to feel that connectivity, which is really great. And between Newt and his nomad friend that gets tangled up in his business, it really does form an interesting friendship that I really enjoyed. Mostly because Newt is such a strange character who doesn't get along with people at all. He says that people are really easily annoyed by him, and I think the movie is alluding to the fact that he has Asperger's. He doesn't make eye contact, he can't understand other people, and he has a really hard time telling anyone how he feels. It's a delicate subject that they don't really tap dance around because no one really talks about it. It's just who he is as a character, which is really interesting. I'm sure you have a friend that is really into animals, like wholeheartedly obsessed with animals. And that's just kind of who Newt Scamander is. He's in love with these animals to the fact that he'd probably murder a person if they were to come between him and the animals. Which is why Newt Scamander is kind of a hard character to have as a main character. But personally, I really enjoyed Eddie Redmayne's performance, and his Muggle friend was fantastic too, a dude who has not been good in like any movie I've ever seen him in.
How's everybody feeling this afternoon?
He's pretty much like the knockoff Jack Black, but he is so different in this movie. He's a really genuine character. I thought Tina was a pretty good character. Actually, her name's Porpatina. Actually, J.K. Rowling, if you're listening to this, you think you could just quit writing and just start naming babies for a living? I love your writing, don't get me wrong, but you make the most ridiculous names. I think that that's J.K.'s real calling. J.K., keep being a writer. And by the way, this was Rowling's first ever screenplay, so now she's written books, plays, and movies. Kind of impressive. Kind of really impressive. Well, Tina was great, and her sister, who was played by Fine Frenzy, I guess that's her stage name, she was fine. Like, one of the most enchanting characters in this whole series. So like I said, if you're a fan of
Harry Potter,
I do suggest you go to see it because you'll enjoy it. But I'm going to start to get into spoilers now, so I suggest you get out of here if you haven't seen it yet. But if you have, let's jump into this.
Soiled it! Soiled it! Soiled it!
Before walking into this movie, I knew that I'd see Johnny Depp. I just didn't know where I'd see him. I didn't guess that one of the twists of the movie would be that Johnny Depp was playing Colin Farrell, who was playing a character in the movie. I did not guess that.
Oh my god, this dude's a big deal, Frank. He's like a true-to-life slumdog millionaire.
He always puts some like awesome twist at the end of his movies to trick the audience.
Oh yeah, like in The Sixth Sense, you find out that the dude in that hairpiece the whole time, that's Bruce Willis, the whole movie.
That's not the twist.
This movie hits you in the very beginning with a ton of newspaper articles, a lot having to do with that guy Grindelwald, who they don't explain much at all. If you know about the story, you know about the backstory, you know about his affection for the Deathly Hallows, you can see a couple things coming ahead of time, which is really cool. But basically it gets to the twist, and the twist wouldn't matter to you if you didn't already know who Grindelwald was. It's kind of like all those movies where at the end it just turns out that the twist is that everyone's looking for Matt Damon. Doesn't make any sense. It's just like you're in this movie filled with no names and you get to the very end and all of a sudden Johnny Depp's there and you're just like, what is that mustache on your face, man? I like Colin Farrell fine enough, and I could have kept him over Johnny Depp in this movie for sure, I think. But he wasn't super interesting as a villain, except for when he was acting with Ezra Miller, who I actually really enjoyed in this movie. It was so hard to figure out what he was doing. He was so jittery, but by the time you get to the end and you find out that he's the one that's the Obscurus, well, things start to make a little bit more sense. For a lot of the time, I thought Colin Farrell was like this dark warlock trying to like control this little kid's mind, getting close into him, whispering secrets, but I'm pretty sure there was just like an overall like sexual tone there, which was extremely uncomfortable, to be honest, because I think Ezra Miller's supposed to be playing like a kid. Like, he doesn't look like a kid necessarily, but I think he's supposed to be like 13, 14, 15, around that area. I only allude to that because of the relationship Grindelwald has with Dumbledore, which was very manipulative in its nature, which will lead us into what is called the greatest wizard battle of all time, and that might make these movies worth it, if it can live up to the hype. I always thought the idea of a non-magic person in the magic realm was cool, so I was hoping Ezra Miller wouldn't be the main villain because it was just such an obvious kind of turn, which is why it didn't work as well, but what are you gonna do, I guess? And the other climax I was talking about before was the big blue bird dragon thing that kind of falls in the cup. That whole part is in the trailer, which, what are you doing? But the story between Newt Scamander and Colin Farrell's character, I didn't think really meshed. Kept cutting back and forth. It would be like this light story to this really dark story. I don't feel like we spend enough time with Newt to really warrant there being more movies with him being the main character. Obviously he will be, but it doesn't feel like that, you know? It just feels like it was a one-off. He's just a guy who wrote a book in the Harry Potter universe. I'm assuming it'll be a lot more about Grindelwald in the future, but if this connection between Newt and Grindelwald still exists, I don't really get that. I don't know if Dumbledore will be a main character in the future or what. One of my favorite parts of this movie was definitely the beasts. Once Newt crawls back into that case, he gets his friend to come on in with him. They start to explore everything. I don't know if everything inside the briefcase makes sense. Like, I don't know how these animals don't all eat each other. They're not really fenced in or anything, but they have like sheets. I don't know. But the whole fact that there's this huge world inside of his briefcase is super cool. I did think it was really lame how Newt only came to America for 2 reasons, one of which he almost completely disregarded as soon as bringing it up, and the second was to release a giant thunderbird into the air, a bird that didn't look nearly as good as Buckbeak from the original, and that has the power of Storm from the X-Men. Like, yeah, I think Newt's decision making is a little bit dangerous. And honestly, this movie has a lot to do with X-Men, a lot of like people hiding their powers, and I mean, that's fine though, I love X-Men. There was this whole political side to this movie too. I liked how it started to get into like wand registration, and it kind of got into non-mage wizard relationships, but then once it started getting into actual politicians that literally had no bearing on the story at all, it just, you could tell that it was only for exposition purposes. Overall, I did really enjoy Fantastic Beasts as much as I had all these problems with it. It was a beautifully shot movie. The editing was really weird sometimes, real choppy even, and that was really strange, but I really enjoyed myself. I really felt like J.K. Rowling, who wrote this whole screenplay, took me back to the world that she originally created, and that was fun. So I'm going to rate this movie a decent prequel out of 10, which is honestly not bad. Let's just pray for Rogue One. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me on this Chomp Down. If you enjoyed yourself, leave a like and hit subscribe if you want to see some more episodes coming out soon. I think I might try to get into more Harry Potter stuff, maybe do a quick review of all the movies in one episode. Anyways, thank you so much for joining me, and I love you guys. I'll see you again soon. I'll chomp you later.